Okay. You all should get a notification here. That's also one of the more annoying things. I wish it would just not tell you. It's kind of boisterous. So welcome to ABCs of Online Learning. My name's Chris Daniel. I work in the Instructional Design Center as a faculty PD manager. And what that means is I want to help you get the information that you need to serve your students and to not feel stress if possible. I guess that's impossible in this day and age, but to at least limit the stress that some of these tasks can sort of impose. And I'm not sure, you can raise your hand online or indicate, or at least indicate to yourself, is anybody new to online teaching this term? So I assume some might have at least some experience here. That's kind of the focus of what I'm going to present. But within that, we always seem to have a lot of, you can never learn everything. It takes me, I've been doing this a while, and, I learn something new every day. And I think that's probably as it should be. I'm going to give you all a hyperlinked in the chat, a hyperlinked access to my outline of this presentation. Somebody said that they were. So I hope that Alex, that you'll get some good information here you can use. But more importantly, I hope that this is an opportunity to get to know us. And for all of our eCampus courses, you should have an instructional designer that is assigned to you and your courses. Now, if you're not an eCampus, I'm available to you, and we'll get you the help that you need. So more than anything, realize what's possible here, and then take notes on what you want to know, and maybe where you excel, also what the opportunities for improvement and edification are, and let us help you. William says, I've done asynchronous online, but I have a class this term that's synchronous online, and the first class wasn't so great. So I'd love for you to elucidate that either as we go along, William, or how I can help you maybe after we get done with this, because I want to be there for Campus One folks as much as I can. So let's get started a little bit, and let's make it a dialogue. How about that? So if I'm running along, we don't have to get through this whole list. I've got a lot of links. Some things I don't have linked because there's a lot to unpack, perhaps too much to unpack, but let's try to make it a dialogue if we can. And I'm really comfortable with that. But if you don't want to, I want you to be comfortable. So let's, first of all, when we talk about online learning, the first thing that's in my mind for my own personal ethics, professional ethics, but also to keep the university out of trouble and to serve our students. I kind of put students ahead of like legal trouble, but it does both. When we make accessibility the first order of business in what we're doing. And I could spend an hour on each of these topics, but let me just kind of briefly give you an overview of what those things mean to me. First of all, it's everybody at EKU's job to make sure course materials, the programs that folks experience, even the assignments are as accessible as possible. And I think of the personal responsibility factor in a couple real key ways that are really not that hard to do if you start your thinking and your planning with these tips in mind. First of all, I don't shoot a video, except there's a few exceptions to that, without writing a script. I write a script for every video that I shoot, and I try to keep my lecture type videos. I also am an adjunct and co-founder of our Masters in Instructional Design program here at Eastern. So every script that I cut or every video I produce, with just a couple of exceptions, gets a script first. And that keeps me honest on time and organization for starters. And then it makes that immediately accessible because I can dump that into one or more programs and have a caption file with that. So it's really helpful. And if I were to turn that into audio, then I've got a transcript that should be 100% accessible. For things that aren't, I encourage use of our tool called Microsoft Stream. And that's an online streaming video platform that comes part of EKU. In the notes, the outline notes that I have, there's a link to EKU's instructions on how to use that and how that works. Glad to demonstrate that to any of you. Let me make sure we don't have anybody hanging out. Yeah. Let's admit Abby. Sorry, Abby. Sometimes I need a facilitator to help me on some of these because I've got a lot going on in my mind. So Microsoft Stream, check that out. Fourth, begin your documents the right way. If we were to go into Microsoft Word, I can show you real quickly. You've probably seen those styles, and you have like header 1, header 2, title. You could set you could just work using those to begin, but you can also define how those look any way you want. And if you will start your documents by using those headers, by making sure you have ordered and unordered lists in an appropriate way, if you limit the use of tables, there's a lot that you can do. And I'm going to run a session on how to make documents accessible. And if you do those things, you're going to make that experience a lot easier for students. Any images that you have, if you put them in the learning management system, you've heard about alt tagging and that sort of thing. That's really important. It's also important to recognize when you have a decorative image, and either to remove it, which is often okay, or to at least mark it as a decorative image inside of the learning management system or your website, or there are a couple ways to do that. Again, kind of outside the scope of what we're doing today. I'm not showing how-tos on that, but I'm glad to take time afterwards, meet with you individually, or if you want to, once we're done talking and you've all asked questions, I can show you how. And then third-party tools. Lots of people like to use, there are myriad, Kahoot. Some people use Kahoot. Some people use Flipgrid. There's just many third-party tools that sort of plug into the web browser, to our learning management interface. We need to make sure those are accessible. Each of these companies should produce what's called a VPAT, which is essentially an accessibility document. VPAT stands for something, accessibility template standard, and we can look at what aspects of that service or program are accessible and which aren't. Any questions about accessibility? Like, I always think about that first. Like, there's much more, and there are people that stake their whole careers on this. So it's a dense field. Tim, did you want to say something?
Yeah, I wanted to ask about closed captioning.
Yes,
When I have a course that I'm uploading a video every week. It's an asynchronous course. Is there software available that will automatically close caption my videos, or is I was looking at the streams thing and I thought that's what it was, but then there wasn't anything on that document link that really gave me indication that it did closed captioning.
Yeah. So quickly, if I look at one of my, let me see if I can find some of my videos that I've uploaded, and I've uploaded several for different faculty. But let me. Can you see this screen here? I'm going to try to not play this. When I made this video, I dumped the video into Microsoft Stream. I get a transcript right here. The transcript I find to be really accurate. Now, if they're like as in true closed captioning, if there's something going on the screen, in terms of audio, we have to document that. So it's not a 100% perfect closed caption document, but it's real darn close. And what's more is you can go in and search the transcript, so it will run along with the timeline here, or it should. I don't know why it's not. Maybe because I'm not hitting play. I'm not sure. But when this works like it should, maybe it's because I've got Zoom on. I can go hit edit here, and if I've got a word that's wrong or punctuation that's wrong, I can correct this myself. And so that's one more reason to keep your lectures, presentations, and video pretty short. But then this is accessible, and without getting into the weeds here, you can export this. So you can export that and offer that standalone, and it has timestamps. So I use like e-learning authoring tools. And if I need to dump part of this video into my e-learning tool, I can pull this caption file, dump it right in. It syncs up. It syncs up like magic. That's the best solution we have currently. There's all kinds of other solutions that may work better, but they cost, and there's some personnel over. Somebody's got to do some extra work. That help? Okay, great. Any other questions? I don't care how many of these we get through, because we've got the outline, and I want you to know that I like helping you. I like having a job. Somebody just that's fine, Cindy. This is we float in and out as we need to. Cindy's one of our instructional designers, and she's always happy to help too. Let's go on to B. I've listed some what I consider basic skills, but I want you to know what you need to know. So here are some examples, and I'll talk through these, but write down, or you may already know what you think you need to know. What are your I don't like to say deficits, but what are the areas that you need to improve on, and let somebody help. Let me help, let somebody help. First of all, get your course site in order. Like, make sure you know how to get access to a course site. Some people like to work on their online courses a year in advance, and I think that's appropriate. Like, Rome wasn't built in a day, and neither is your class going to be if it's any good. So if you need access to what I call a blank shell or a dummy shell, we can make that happen. IT, you can call, if it's a Campus One course, you just call up at IT and say, look, I need a shell to work on this particular course. And in Blackboard, it's really nice because you can do everything and then get some help just copying that into the final, to the actual live production course, and you're done. So you do the work up front. You don't have to worry about if the actual shell exists or not, and then bring it in. But make sure you know how to access that, and you know how to at least get into it and poke around. Second of all, get help. I find too many faculty, because they did dissertations or because they did, like, there's no dumb people around here much. I know you all know how to help yourself, but sometimes it's just like you don't know the terminology, you don't know the institutional procedure. Get help, whether it's me, if it's general LMS help, instructional designer, somebody like me, or IT can help. If it's general technology, typically that's instructional, or that's IT 622-3000, or you can submit a trouble ticket through their website. If you have help, need help on specific services like Kahoot's not working right, well, sometimes IDs can help, but sometimes that is a situation where you're going to have to find your expert somewhere, whether it's a colleague at another institution or asking around. Documents. I hope that you all have a good approach for managing documents. I left sort of a how-to file, or sort of a nice article about document management. And for me, the basic concept is, don't save stuff you don't need. Categorize finished versus unfinished documents, and then use one document platform. Like, I think the temptation, or the temptation is like, okay, you started with Google Drive, and now you're looking at Microsoft OneDrive, and maybe there's a third way that you're trying to share files. If you're an Apple user, you may have iCloud or something like that. Man, that, to me, that's a whole lot of, that's too many places to put things, unless you're trying to do a backup or redundancy plan. So I would probably stick with one platform, maybe whatever your colleagues agree on, or maybe what you'll be committed to using expertly, and just stick with that. In terms of images, if you use a lot of images, find an image storage solution that works for you. I prefer Google Photos because I'm just in that I'm in that sphere a lot, and I have a personal account, and any photos that I might want to share with the class, I would put there. But lots of different, that's a skill set in and of itself, not only in terms of storing them, but manipulating them. I like Snagit for quick sort of infographic creation, or tutorial creation with images. But there are lots of different options there. And in terms of the basic LMS, like just bare bones basic skills in Blackboard, learn how to make and manage announcements, learn how to operate discussion boards expertly, whether you want them to be graded or not graded, understand how assignments work. And there are lots of different assignment types within Blackboard. I may talk a little bit about that in another slide, but an assignment is not just necessarily you have students upload something and then you give a grade. There's Leah trying to join us. So know what you need to know, depending on the number of assignments that you're going to have and the types. Get good at being able to deploy those, or at the very least, if you're working with an instructional designer, how to utilize that feature. Like, there's an inline grading function. There's the ability to make rubrics and attach those rubrics to your assignment so that you can grade. Also, people that are going to be the instructor of record in a course and are working with facilitators, if it's a very large course, you need to develop some sort of plan for integrator reliability. And a rubric can be a really great way. It's a tool that you need to know how to use in that case. Also, whatever resources that you're going to point students to, if you know how to use them, then you're a step ahead. But a lot of folks want to do something, but they don't know what kinds of resources they need, or they may need to know how to manage those. One example might be if you're linking out to learning objects. There's a great website called Merlot, but utilizing that, bringing those resources into the course can be a challenge. Same way with articles, like you want to manage several academic articles. Well, start with the library. They're more than willing to help. And then also group management. Group management is a big challenge. I bet for whoever has the live course, I can't remember if it was Alex, if you're trying to do groups in this live course, that can be kind of a tough juggle at first. So learn how to use them, get help learning how to use them. And we're going to offer sessions like this to kind of show you too. Any questions, comments before we move on? Okay, so a lot of this is obvious kinds of things, but one little nuance, communication early and often. In my courses, I try to email at least the first few weeks. Well, I have a student here in one of my courses, and maybe that person is sick of the number of messages that I've sent out, but I try to, really try to let them know I'm, my fingers on this course the first 2 weeks. I mean, I'm going to almost annoy you. My presence is going to be there. I'm responding to a lot of discussion board posts, but then as we go along, I kind of remove the scaffolding a little bit, depending on what their feeling is about how I'm operating. And some have said, well, that last couple of weeks you didn't really do much. Well, that was intentional. My intent is to let the students discuss, let the students make this sort of community their own. But otherwise, I try to really make a lot of announcements. I try to also sometimes use an organizing graphic. In my field, they call it an advanced graphic organizer. And it's essentially a little chart or a labeled graphic. Like if you're teaching somebody about small engine repair, you may start off with, okay, folks, this week we're talking about a small engine. And you'd send them a graphic with all the parts of the small engine labeled. These are the things we're going to talk about. It just sort of primes the pump in terms of getting their learning going. And the nice thing about all this stuff is you can schedule in Blackboard these messages a year in advance if you really wanted to. You can have them ready to go so that when it's time to run the course, you don't have to necessarily think about what do I need to be talking about this week. But you can also pivot to that if somebody's having trouble. You can pivot to making your own message or contacting them personally. Somebody's made some comments. Libraries can help embed articles. That's great. And I'm glad to know that you're glad that I'm a real live person. And I think that's another point. Like when we talk about your schedule and your lifestyle, there's this pressure I think a lot of faculty feel, and I think it's unnecessary to think that you don't have to be connected to this course in a persistent manner. Like you don't have to carry it on your phone. But so recognize that you're human, recognize that you've got a lot going on. You're adult learners and online. Remember, eCampus median age is 33.5 years old. So, these are people with jobs, families, a lot going on, just like you do. Acknowledge each other's humanity, but, set the expectation when can they receive a response from you? Questions, comments? Let me talk briefly about course design. Really, for me, it means making sure all the elements are in place so that students do not have any trouble getting about the business of doing the learning tasks and meeting those goals and objectives that you set. And so one way we approach it, it's not the only way. Some might argue it's not even the best way, but it's a way that's based in evidence and that we found successful, is the Quality Matters rubric. And if I could take a second to bring that up in a window. Now, there's a lot to unpack in this rubric, but it's 42 specific review standards that cover these 8 areas. How to get started in the course. What are the things that students need to really get started right away with a good sense of what the course is about, who is the leader of the course, and how they can obtain help and move flawlessly through to that first module. What are the learning objectives? What are the fundamental and powerful concepts of your course? How are these expressed with specific, measurable, actionable, time-bound objectives? And do the assessments, do the activities, do the course materials, are they designed to align with those objectives? That's kind of what that part is. How do we assess and measure? Are those assessments, are those measurements consistent with the stated objectives in the course? And I mean, we've all taken classes, because some of you are middle-aged like me, I'm sure. We've all taken classes where that didn't happen. Like, you went into this course, the course was whatever 101, and you were like, I know what the title of the course is, but I don't really know why I'm here exactly, or what we're doing today. We are trying to eliminate that or really reduce it. So I hope that my students in my courses know exactly what this week is about. At least, maybe they don't agree, but they can at least see my rationale for why I chose this topic and how it will relate to the overarching goals and objectives. So we talk about instructional materials and how they align to the goals and objectives, how the activities do, what course technologies that support the learning are those what they need to be, what kinds of learner support structure, both academic support and other forms of support, what do those look like in the course? Are they clearly explicated, and do students know how to avail themselves of those? And then is the course accessible and usable? So 42 points. And when you do an eCampus course, there is a review process where an instructional designer will apply this rubric towards your course and give feedback about that. So we hope that it's a quality experience for students. Now, you don't have to do that to have a quality experience, but I think this sort of thing helps. That's our approach to course design. I think demonstration is an important aspect of certain online environments. And I do just-in-time screencasts. And as I was mentioning, Tim, this is a case that where I would put a just-in-time recording into stream. I prefer it a little bit over YouTube, although I think I've used YouTube the last time I did one, and the captioning was okay. But if you put it in stream, the captioning is going to be really pretty close. The only downside to stream, and I meant to tell you this, and it's something IT can't seem to get around. If you post something in Teams, potentially anybody at EKU could see your video. To me, that's not a big deal. If somebody wants to learn about instructional design, well, so much the better for me, and so much the better for the world, maybe, assuming I'm doing it right. But so that's the one downside of stream. And I always offer optional meetings, optional synchronous meetings. I try to do one every other week. If students like them, I will do them more. I mean, I'm not going to do 4 meetings a week, but I at least like to give them an hour or so a week to come and see me at a predetermined time. Of course, I'm always available for meetings. I did a 9 o'clock meeting last night. I'm not suggesting you have to have your meetings at 9 o'clock, but this student really wanted help, and I was happy to chat with her for a minute. So. And then, office hours, I always do mine by appointment. And I know that's nothing new to you all, but recognize you don't have to have access to the full Zoom. By virtue of your EKU email account, you have Microsoft Teams access. And Teams is pretty good. I still prefer Zoom for some of the things we're doing. Somebody's trying to connect again. But Teams works really well. We did one of our first meetings in Teams. I think it was last week, this week. My wife's had surgery, so I'm running on very little sleep. So, but that is that's a viable option. It's relatively straightforward to use. I don't ever like saying anything's easy to use, but it's not that many steps to get started. Questions, comments? Abby, you access the rubric in Blackboard if you go to Course Tools. Rubrics is one. It's a sort of under the fold course tool. I'm glad to show that to you after we're done today. Just hang out. I'll show you how that works, and then I'll show you where you can access lots of canned rubrics that work just fine. You can modify them, but essentially you're manually entering sort of the levels of performance and the various criteria. Glad to show that to you. Yes, ma'am. So let me talk just a minute about educational methods. I think too often in online courses, we make a distinction between whether we record something, like we record a lecture, whether we give them a PowerPoint presentation with those lecture notes on it, or just a script or something to read that has the exact same information. Educational research makes no distinction in terms of the mediation of instruction relative to its effectiveness. In fact, as Richard Clark called it, the garbage can or the garbage truck model, that you're still taking garbage to the dump, whether you do it in a El Camino, a garbage truck, a pickup truck. What is important are instructional methods. How are you going to engage the students in terms of their learning? Think about your objectives and then decide if any of these might be appropriate relative to your goals and objectives. And there's research that we can find that may suggest that. Of course, in the business world, they use a lot of case-based instruction. They talk about business cases, and they find that that's very effective. Of course, think about synchronous versus asynchronous. Some of these instructional methods probably work better live. Maybe some, depending on if you're using manipulables or tangible things that folks need. Of course, that's going to work better in a face-to-face course. But a lot of these methods are fungible, whether we're talking about online, face-to-face, or some sort of hybrid educational model. And I've got those in a list. I think for the sake of time. One thing I do like, though, that I don't see a lot of, I don't see it called this because it's kind of a K-12 word term, but web quests, like go ask students to do informal. I don't like to call it research because, Googling something's not research really. I mean, or going to Consumer Reports and figuring out which washer you're going to buy is not really research. But so I like to call that kind of stuff a web quest. So figure out what the goals and objectives are and have students go get information and come back and share what they've discovered. And there are lots of different ways you can sort of gamify that. You can give them a scenario, lots of interesting ways to make web searching interesting and put a different spin on it. When we talk about engagement, somebody gave a definition that I think was really effective, and I promptly forgot it. But my point is, in giving you this slide, is I'm asking you, what are you going to do yourself as an instructor to get your students to do something, to try something, to experience, to relate, to reflect, to assimilate something into what they already know and can do? If you're just giving them a lecture and you're saying, go do this, go write a paper and upload the paper, or you're giving them just a multiple choice quiz, I argue that's not engaging in any way. That is merely getting them to put data into their brain that they will promptly forget. But if we can do talk about all those axiom terms. If you show me, I learn. If I do, I remember. I forget how all that goes. But what are you going to do to get them to really do something? And I think once you figure that out, then you're really going to be sailing. Every one of our courses, and I don't mean to use my experience, but that's all I've got. It's my experience, pretty much. The terminal performance in almost every one of our courses is a project that they should be proud to include in a professional portfolio so that they can go get a job. And that was my fundamental and powerful concept when I sort of authored this course. I want my students to be able to get a job if that's their goal. If that's not their goal, then whatever their goals are, I want to support. But I wanted to have them write very few papers. I wanted to eliminate multiple choice quizzes except to support readings, not to prove that they read, but to support them in the readings. And so that's I think that's getting them to really engage with these processes because it's for their benefit. They're going to hopefully show future employers their products and they're going to get a job. That's the hope. So what are you going to, like, relative to what I'm always curious to know what you think you're going to do. So share that with me at some point, down the road or whatever. What do you think that is really going to get them to engage? What got you passionate about your field? I'm sure that's going to be similar. And to me, I think that you are the best ambassadors of not only your fields, but of learning in general. And if you're not stoking that fire in some way, then, how can you? Do you want to do that? I hope that you do. And let me help brainstorm with you. So now I'm talking more about, we talked about basic skills, and sort of the skills and the tools kind of go together. But I want you to think about, what are the essential tools that you may need help with, and let us help. Using the announcements feature in Blackboard, that's an essential tool to me. That announcement feature is really helpful, and it shoots an email to their inbox, which some students now find that annoying. I wish we could get text, but maybe they would hate that even more. Asynchronous writing tools. Think about blogs, wikis, and journals. There are those three tool types, and it's the same asynchronous writing, but it's kind of done in a different format that I think a lot of students, like that difference. Like they like to write a journal, some like to write a journal entry and know that you're the only person that can see that unless you open it up. And so you can have a sort of a dialogue back and forth. Now I know that, if we have these mega sections, that's more difficult, but you could also collaborate, and people are branching out now. Soon Microsoft Teams with our new learning management system, Ultra, that you can try if you want. Nobody's ready to move in mass to that, but if you wanted to try it out, it locksteps with Teams. So in my Ultra class, I can hit one button and now everybody's got a Microsoft team, and we've got a lot of dialogue, and we could do writing projects within Teams that would resemble a wiki. But just think about, more than just a paper they submit. What are some writing experiences you can give those students that would be authentic and a derivation from just a standard paper? Think about your audio visual tools. We have Screencast-O-Matic for eCampus folks, where if you wanted to do a screencast and then edit it, that's possible. There are all kinds of tools that manipulate audio, video, and static images. I love Snagit. I'd love to show that to you all sometime. I use Snagit every single day to make quick infographics, or to show somebody something on the screen where I can't be there with them. If I want to say, click this first, second, third, it makes those graphics in just a couple minutes. It's really easy. Photo sharing, again, I think that's important for some folks, maybe not everybody. Are you going to include social media components? I'm lukewarm about that, but some have expressed the interest in forming LinkedIn groups. I think that can be useful. I don't know so much about Facebook, but certainly you can ask students to look at Twitter and see what the hive mind is talking about relative to a particular topic. There are ways to do that by using searches with hashtags and that sort of thing. You can also ask them to go on Google Trends and see where various topics relative to a theme are in terms of how many folks have searched for that topic. So lots of ways to incorporate that. Think about what might work for you in your course. Also, when we talk about assessments, like, understand that you can just do simple grading. You can use a rubric, but there's also, Blackboard has an inline grader. So if you want to bring up a paper and then do markup, do red correction pen or type a comment at a specific point in the student's paper, you can do that as well. And then learn, whatever video conferencing platform you're able to use and want to use. I prefer Teams for most things. I like Zoom for these types of sessions with faculty because I just think it's a little bit more user-friendly, and the video compression seems to be better. Let's let Cindy back in. I hate that. I hope one day Zoom bombing will go away so I don't have to do this. Any questions, comments?
Hey, Chris, this is Alex. I was just curious. You talked about Zoom, Microsoft Teams on a couple occasions.
Yes,
so, if we're doing asynchronous, or if, like, for example, keeping your students engaged, what I do, I'm an employment coordinator, career counselor for the VA. And so one of the first things I do is just have a meeting to kind of get to know those individuals and then try to see where they want to go. And that kind of leads me on to how to best assist them in their employment journey. But using Teams and stuff like that, if we wanted to do like breakout sessions and whatnot, would we still be able to do that even though we're in the asynchronous type of class? If we wanted to do that without, with the class, and then maybe have them do it separately if we put them into breakout groups.
So in terms of live breakout groups, I know it's possible. I've never used it. In terms of asynchronously, let me bring up our internal team. I can come up here and I can add a channel. And what you might want to do, if we're talking about asynchronous communication in Teams, is devise various channels for various topics. And so we have several channels here, and you could create channel 1, channel 2, channel 3, channel 4, and put people in those, or direct people to those channels to ask their questions offline, where people from that channel will pay attention to it.
Okay.
I don't know if that gets at your need, but in terms of breakout groups when we're doing it live, yes, Teams has that feature. I have not used that, but I will help you and also learn myself how to better use that.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes, sir. So don't forget to remind me about it, please. So a lot to unpack with these future and current trends, and I just wanted to briefly mention some. Not that you have to be up on them, but realize that this is you all know this is an evolving field. This is an evolving, online learning is an evolving situation, and was sort of supercharged by the pandemic. They call in my field, what they called that was emergency online teaching, emergency online instruction. They don't like to call it like pure online teaching and learning, because that we try to be more methodical and have more of an approach relative to getting those objectives and aligning everything to our stated objectives. With pandemic teaching, we were just sort of thrust into it, and people did the best they could. And, it wasn't necessarily a great experience for everybody. But let me talk just briefly about some of these topics. Plagiarism is a huge concern. I'm not sure the research bears out that it happens any more frequently in online than face-to-face. Certainly anytime where you have very high stakes assessments, whether it's a paper, whether it's a large quiz, and you don't change that up, and you don't have other opportunities to measure performance, there's always a chance that a student's going to do what they can to maximize their score on that, which I don't think that's honest, but I think that's just reality. And actually accounting literature, I do presentation on anti-plagiarism. They're the forerunners of all this stuff, I guess, because there's been so much fraud in accounting over the decades. But somebody created what's called the fraud triangle, and it's basically where the stakes meet the opportunity, meet the attitude, where somebody has a sort of a defeatist attitude, or an attitude that, well, I'll never get caught, or then you're going to see cheating sort of occur with more frequency. There's lots to unpack there. That some people think that these proctors that you can use, or some of these technologies that you can use, are invasive and aversive to learning. Some people say, well, I've got to use that. Lots to unpack, and it's definitely a topic I try to keep an eye on. For example, we have departments where the terminal performance is a high stakes exam, like the NCLEX for nursing, or another board exam. So how else are you going to prepare students to take high stakes exams, but maybe to have some high stakes exams? So, in that context, it makes a little more sense. And everybody's got different values and opinions on it. And I'm interested to know yours, and we will talk more about that in future sessions. Lots of people are interested in podcasts, although I think as the complexity to produce and distribute podcasts has decreased, we just have sort of a plethora of different podcasts that one could peruse. But that said, I do think that recording audio messages in ways students can access them, and giving them information so that they can take and consume that on their device of choice, can be very powerful. Almost every nursing student I've talked about with, I used to work with nursing extensively, they love being able to access videos on their phone, not for watching, but for listening to, as they drove back and forth from work to home. And so that was a powerful thing that we tried to let them leverage that to the extent that we could. We had some other constraints. So I think podcasts, not necessarily to publish one for the world to listen to and get a lot of followers, although, that's certainly available to you, and we can help kind of show you how to do that. But it's something I'm looking at for education, even though podcasts have been around a while. Gamification is something I'm looking at, and some of that's real cutesy. To me, gamification is strongest when we can include great story, some sort of social interaction aspect, whether we can present authentic challenges where students can get feedback on those challenges and have some way of tracking their progress towards a challenge. And I always forget that fourth thing. But to me, the Pavlovian stuff like badges, points, that doesn't necessarily mean as much to students. And there was a Toda et al. Article that I can share with you. It's actually it should be in that document, where they found 26 gamification elements in online learning. And they offered that as a taxonomy. And what they are trying to do now is do some research about efficacy relative to those, I think 24, 26 types of gamification. So it's an evolving research line that I'm personally sort of interested in. Micro learning is a concept where we take small bits of information, assess for that, and then give credit toward that. But a joke that my major professor and I sort of had was, well, if you do enough of these, what happens? Is it a degree? Is it a course? What is it? So it's also kind of a buzzword too. But I think that small chunks of information and then the ability for students to do something with that and be assessed on that. There's some tips and techniques that I think could be effective. There's a reemergence of MOOCs, and let me show you kind of what we might be up against in the future. And this is not to scare, it's more to show, let's do this so that we can stay in the game. This is outlier.org. It's a massively online learning opportunity where students can enroll in classes for around $400 for a 3-credit course, and their credits are cleansed through University of Pittsburgh. So, and they have topics on philosophy, calculus, astronomy, I think algebra, and these are sort of celebrity, hyper photogenic people. In the calculus class, they have 3 instructors. One does the calculus on a chalkboard, one does it on a tablet, and another one handwrites it. And so you can, as if that's not going to change learning. But if you like one instructor over another, you can switch back and forth and learn, limits with one of the professors and some other aspect of calculus with another. And you take it for credit. If you're on the credit track, you get your 3 hours for calculus, and then you can transfer that credit wherever. And so these are the people that are going to eat our lunch, in my opinion, if we stay with textbook publishers. So if you do all your course with McGraw-Hill or Pearson or whatever, and you don't bring your personality into your class, this is the organization or one like that's the one that's going to eat your lunch moving forward. That's an opinion, obviously, but it's something I think about. It's the reemergence of these massively online courses that they tried in 08, 2010, and they just didn't really, like, people would all sign up for it, like, oh, this is a real cool thing, and like 12% would finish, but they're offering credit. Think about what productivity tools that you want to use. This is something that's always evolving. Of course, we have the G Suite, the Google suite of programs. There's tons of them. Also, Microsoft 365 has just a plethora of different productivity tools. I use Evernote as one of my productivity tools because I pay for it. I like the way that it flows. But that's something that constantly evolves. Figure out where you want to be in that evolution, and let us help you get organized and be as productive as you want to be. Let me show you about performance dashboards. That's something that you may not hear it called a performance dashboard, but when I show this to you, you're gonna, hopefully it will make some sense. So here is a writing assignment in one of my classes, and I think I've de-anonymized this. Now, some of this is like, at this point, is kind of nonsense in a way, but the artificial intelligence analyzed this student's post, and my student that's in this class, don't try to figure out who this is, please. Okay. I know you got better things to do, but this is FERPA land. So they made 3 substantive posts, and that's what I set up.
Chris, we still see this. We still see the PowerPoint.
Well, I don't like that. Let me stop the share. Thank you for telling me. Let me show the share, and let me share. Now, do you see this? Okay, so this is an example of a dashboard, And if artificial intelligence has analyzed this student post and their responses to other posts, and it's given it so I set up, I want 3 posts, or, and that's the, okay, thank you, Trina, I appreciate that. It suggests that the sentence complexity is 10th grade. Now, what's that based on? I would need to dig into documentation. How many content words? Now, to me, this is a little more telling. How many content words to how many just like what they're calling functional words, prepositions, articles, that sort of thing. I don't know how it measures the critical thinking level. That's interesting, but compared to however it measures that versus the class average 76, and word variation 53%. What I'm not telling you this is like this particular feature is like the most awesome thing. I'm telling you this is where online learning is going to go in part. Like part of what we are doing is going to get supplanted by artificial intelligence. Now, whether we choose to use that, embrace it, reject it, ignore it, that's our choice. But this is a future trend. And I think to do this, at least to do my job, maybe for some of you to do your jobs, it's good to kind of know what's coming down the line. And Blackboard has a number of these, most of which nobody knows anything about, and has had them for years. But it's becoming more popular now. Also, figure out what surveying tools are hot. Right now, we use a lot of Qualtrics at EKU because we bought a site license for Qualtrics. I'm kind of a quasi intermediate, beginner intermediate person. There's people whose entire job it is to create questionnaire surveys and utilize those very complex tools. But you can do something as simple as Google Forms, and to do surveying and quick polling. You're going to get a Google form for me this afternoon saying, how'd you like me? What went well, what could have gone better? But figure out if that's appropriate for your class and what you're doing, and then figure out what you want to do. Synchronous collaboration. We talked a little bit about Teams. There's so many ways to collaborate using shared documents, text-based chat. I really think that using Teams for learning is going to be really great. Students may get burnt out on it eventually, but it's great for anybody that wants to jump into my IDL 812 course that has something to say, can do that. I have already made all kinds of posts there. Most people have not read them, or if they have, they just glanced over them, but a few have engaged me with that. It's just a more organic way to, I think, to exchange information, and one I hope students will appreciate. And there's tons more future and current trends, but those are just things I was thinking about. The best thing I think you could read out of everything that I have is 7 keys to 6 or 7 keys to effective instructional feedback from the late Grant Wiggins. He was Harvard trained and then was an educator for many years before he passed, I think, in 2016. And he said that, and it's a great article. It's a quick read. Feedback should be seen as where students want to be, need to be, where the goal says they should be versus where they are. And if you communicate where they are between those 2 points in a friendly, collegial, positive, tangible way, you're going to get, you're really going to serve that student the best. And so he said that, feedback should be goal referenced. Like, let's talk about the goal. Let's not talk about, opinion. And sometimes that goal is shared. Sometimes it's just what it needs to be based on the course. Is the feedback tangible and transparent? Is it, can the student understand and see that feedback? And do you do that in sort of an actionable way too? Can they take action based on the feedback? And then is it user friendly? Does it make sense? And I argue that it should be collegial too, because we should start treating students as not colleagues, but as humans that are on a journey, just like we're all on a journey. And it is timely. Getting back to them quick is is important, especially in these 8-week courses we offer as part of eCampus. And is it ongoing? Because a lot of things we do are iterative. Is it consistent? Last thing I think is limits, and I would need to stop because I want you all to talk. Think about what limits you have for students. Like in some writing courses, I would say a lot of students don't know what plagiarism really is. So how hard are you going to be on the student that misquotes something or that paraphrases or takes on loan? Are you going to really consider it as plagiarism and put your foot down? I mean, that's certainly your prerogative, and depending on what you're doing, maybe that's the right thing. But figure out what these limits are. What about late assignments? Are we gonna? I know that we bury a lot of fake dead grandmothers in every course, or in the institution every term. And what's your figure out what your limits are with stuff like that when you know that, okay, this is not probably legit. But what are you going to do about that? And also about work quality. How are you going to give feedback on that? And what if somebody turns in something that's terrible? Are you going to give them a second chance? I mean, I would. You all thought about that, I'm sure. But think about it for online, because sometimes there's a different nuance, and technology can sometimes get in the way. Digital divide is certainly an issue. Just think about all that. But more importantly, and that student stuff is important, know what your limits are. If you're teaching a 4-4 and then somebody's asked you to overload an online course, figure out how you are going to approach those tasks. And are you going to give yourself reflective time and space? Are you going to give yourself downtime where you're not thinking about this work? And are you going to get people to help you? Get your team in gear that is going to be your support folks. I'm willing to help as much as I can. I mean, I'm only one person. Our department's more than willing to do a lot, especially for eCampus folks, but also for Campus One courses. I want to help the person that's got a lot of students that's stressed out, because it's better for me when we have happy faculty as much as we can. So there's my 2 references, as well as whatever's in the outline. Let me hear from you now in the time we have left. And in online asynchronous, in synchronous, we know to pause a long time to give people time to click the buttons, get their thoughts together. Jeff, thanks for the comment. And somebody said, out of curiosity, having read the post yourself, how accurate is the AI? In the ballpark. I'm reading it because I don't know, like, what's 51% of, like, whatever that was, word diversity? I mean, what does that mean? Could I read the post? Could I figure out what it was about? And was it going through the motions, or did it seem like they did their job? To me, AI is not there yet in terms of, like, has there been intellectual work? I barely know that term, Jeff. Would you talk about that a little bit? I've heard that, but I know Word has an analyzer.
Yeah, sorry, I was trying to find that unmute. It's just that readability, like a grade level. I forget what the percentage one is, but I think it looked really interesting on, like, that evaluation and analysis of the document. It looks like maybe they did additional work on top of that Flesch Kincaid process.
Okay, got it. I'm definitely looking up that term later, because I want to know how that's derived. There's a Lexile score that I know K-12 students have, and that's based on complexity of vocabulary, and each word has a ranking, and all that's been put into a system, but I don't know the specifics of it. Thank you for that comment. But above all today, you have people that get paid to help, and hopefully these people that get paid even want to help. And I hope that I'm in that number, and I hope that you'll get in touch with me. I've been doing this. I've been in Blackboard over 20 years, and I shouldn't probably admit that because I feel stupid every day because there's something there's a bug, there's something new, there's something I never had a lot of experience with. We had terrible trouble with peer review grading tool. It turns out it was a bug, but I was feeling like I can't make heads or tails of this because it's not making sense. Well, it was a bug, but I get humbled every day, but I'm certainly glad to help. And IDC is also glad. We're going to have a kickoff on Thursday and let you all meet some of or actually all of our directors, just to kind of understand what our organization does and how we work to serve you all and students. Well, if you want to stay online and talk about specifics, glad to do that. I'm going to stop the recording here, and I thank you all so much for your time today. This is one of my favorite things to do. I hope that enthusiasm is evident, and let me further prove it by helping you with your individual questions and concerns. So with that, thank you very much.